Jordan Love isn't going to sneak up on anyone in 2024. How is he going to respond to that? Plus, the 49ers' mistakes that the Packers can learn from. All of that on Locked On Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150. If your team wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. At the end of the season, we started talking about the Packers and a different kind of perspective that teams were going to have on them. This hunter versus hunted mentality. That early in the season, they're trying to prove things. They're trying to show who they are. And then once they showed who they are, you beat Detroit, you beat LA, you beat Kansas City. That says something. That proves something to the rest of the league. And the league starts to look at you differently. The same is true now that this team is legit. And we know it's legit. Jordan Love is going to take the brunt of that scrutiny. The perspective of opposing teams is going to be, we have to stop Jordan Love. Now, of course, you got to stop Aaron Jones. He is still very much an essential part of this offense. And we saw it at the end of the season when they were able to get Aaron Jones going. He was a primary driver of offense. This is still a system that is predicated on being able to run the football and stay at least somewhat balanced to set up the play action game and play under center and all those things. But Jordan Love has the shortest odds in the NFC among quarterbacks to be MVP. There is a public perception now that has changed. And that means teams are going to spend the offseason trying to game plan, trying to hyper-analyze what he does well. They're going to look at that 49ers game, the second half in particular, and say, okay, what did the 49ers do? What can we force Jordan Love to do that will get him to look like that version of Jordan Love, as opposed to the version of Jordan Love that we saw for the second half of the season when he was the best quarterback in the league? That means Jordan has to be ready for that. That means Matt LaFleur has to be ready for that. This offensive line, the receivers, it is going to take everyone. But it's also going to take Love staying patient. And we're going to talk about some of the lessons to be learned from the Super Bowl, in particular, some of the mistakes made by the 49ers. But it's also, and this I pointed this out, and a lot of people rightly made the connection to Jordan Love. It was about Patrick Mahomes, and it was a comment from another analyst. I can't remember who it was. I wish I could. I think it was Ben Solak. And then he subsequently wrote about it. And so now I'm pretty sure it was Ben Solak over at The Ringer, who made the case that when Patrick Mahomes was coming out, if we had known when Patrick Mahomes was in the draft that he was capable of playing this patient, this underneath, take the short stuff, take what the defense is giving you, and not try and make the hero play every play, that the perception of him as a prospect would be different. Now, Jordan proved last year he's capable of playing that patiently for long, long stretches. In fact, a lot of his biggest or most glaring interceptions were not reads, they were forces. They're just, I'm trying to make a play. Now, a number of them were also just offline throws. Like the one to Christian Watson to end the game. Just a bad throw. The other two in that game were bad reads. He basically didn't make a bad read interception in the second half of the season. Until the end. Until the end. Then you have like the one to Greenlaw, the first one to Dre Greenlaw is a bad throw, but a good decision. Dump it off. It's just a bad throw. And he got really unlucky that it tipped right into the hands of a linebacker. That is a you know what happens thing. The last one was a force. Bad decision. Not a bad read, a bad decision. Because there are three kinds of interceptions. Bad reads, bad decisions, and bad throws. And sometimes you can have a combination of all three. But they don't always come in the same. As sometimes I see on Twitter, people say, oh, bad throw. No, it wasn't a bad throw. He put it right where he wanted. It was a bad decision. Or it was a bad read. He didn't see that overhang linebacker. He put the ball right where he wanted. Not a bad throw. A bad read. Or you see the coverage and you believe you can make the throw. That's a bad decision. The final interception of the season, that's a bad decision. Just a bad decision. Throwing that ball back across your body into coverage, that was not a read problem. That was a decision problem. So when the screws tighten, is Jordan Love going to make better decisions? What's more, and the point that I'm trying to make with this segment is teams that saw that and saw the early season struggles, they're going to try and find ways to speed Jordan Love up and to make him make bad decisions, which means he has to play even more patiently. He has to play even more like Patrick Mahomes, willing to say, if we can't get the ball down the field, I have to be willing to say, here's 3 yards, or let me take off. We talked about this on our What's Next with Jordan show. He stopped running in the second half of the season. Now, he didn't throw interceptions. He didn't put the ball in harm's way either. But what I want to see is for him to be willing to say, if I have to take off here, I will. If I have to dump this ball down, I will. If I have to throw this ball out of bounds, I will. There is always going to be some amount of YOLO in his game, but that was true of Patrick Mahomes too. And so if you can rein a little bit of that in, harness that, channel that into a more healthy direction, then you can counterpunch whatever defenses are going to throw at you. Because we know he has the ability to play in time and rhythm. And that's going to be tough enough to stop. Like, as long as you have that baseline, like I can play in the structure of the offense, you have to stop the structure of the offense. That's really, really, really hard. The best defenses in the league, the best defenses the Packers played, could not do it. The Chiefs couldn't do it. The Niners couldn't do it. The Vikings couldn't do it. The Steelers couldn't do it, really. So the structure is good, but then it's okay when you need to make a play. That playmaker. How can you do it without forcing it? That's part of his growth and his development. And we talked about it in our interview. This idea that you have to be perfect or you have to be something close to perfect. And I hope what that means to him is that means if I have to dump the ball down, I will. Or on first down with 52 seconds left, I can just throw the ball out of bounds and live to fight another day rather than forcing it to try and make a play. I think he can do it. He's shown so much growth in some of the areas in college. We've just never seen him be nearly as good as he is now. So I don't think it's something to be worried about, but it is certainly something to think about here as we move forward. Speaking of learning from mistakes, the Packers can learn from the 49ers' mistakes, especially in the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about that in just a second on Locked On Packers. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And in the NBA, you can bet on your favorite players, your favorite teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive prop bets, and more. Love basketball same-game parlays for whatever reason. I think they're more fun than a football same game parlay, because if you're taking the like over, all you have to do is cheer for back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You're asking for fun basketball. That's not always the case in football. Sometimes you really have to be cheering situationally in football, but basketball, you're just like, points. Give me everything, give me everything, give me everything. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on Amazon Fire TV channels app. The 49ers have been a team that the Packers have imitated over the years. And I think they're going to continue to do that. And I think there's a lot of reasons to do that. Kyle Shanahan, one of the best schemers of offense in the league. I think the Packers are going to continue to want to look philosophically a lot like this 49ers team. The Packers, luckily, have already overcome one of the big hurdles that the 49ers face. There were a couple times against the Chiefs where the pressure came and Brock Purdy just doesn't have that playmaking ability to make throws. One in particular on third down in the red zone, he gets a free rusher in his face and he throws the ball essentially away. We've seen Jordan Love step up in the pocket or escape the pocket and make a throw on the run or make a throw with someone in his face. Juwan Jennings is wide open. Brock Purdy is never close. The ball goes 10 yards over Juwan Jennings' head. Purdy is a little smaller. He's got small hands. He can't do the things with arm angles that Jordan Love can. So some of this is mitigated. Like there's a reason Shanahan, when they lost to Mahomes and then lost again, went, I got to get a new quarterback. Like this Jimmy Garoppolo guy is just not doing enough. And Brock Purdy does more than Jimmy Garoppolo, but like with his legs, he's not making a ton of throws that Jimmy just can't, because he is also limited with his arm strength. Jordan Love isn't. So from that standpoint, the Packers are not limited there. The other mistake, well, one of the other mistakes, was believing that if you just have great skill talent, the offensive line will figure it out. We saw in this game, communication breakdowns, straight up just inability to block the other team. That offensive line, Trent Williams is incredible, and the rest of the offensive line is just okay. We talked about this in our run-up to that game. You can't just rely on Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and great scheme. You can't do it if you can't block, pass protect. You are not going to be able to score efficiently in the postseason. It is going to be so high variance. And that is exactly what the 49ers were in the postseason. When Trent Williams was off the field, when Deebo Samuel was off the field earlier in the year, that's when they went on that losing streak. You become so top heavy, so dependent on those guys. And the Chiefs were able to mitigate that because they have individual incredible talent and they just zero blitzed the 49ers all day. Trent McDuffie on a corner blitz on a huge third down, gets home. Chris Jones, as I mentioned, on a huge 3rd and goal, gets home, or it was near the goal. I don't know if it was and goal. Always, always, always invest in offensive line. Brian Gutekunst generally has done this, but this is my way of reiterating what we talked about yesterday when I had 2 offensive linemen in my mock draft going, I guess I just had 1. Yeah, just 1. I had to look at it for a second. But you go, I had a lot of people go, well, they don't need an offensive tackle. You always do. You always need a tackle. And by the way, Jordan Morgan can play guard too. So always, even though this receiver room is really good and we think the offensive line room is really good and you go, okay, spend the picks on the defense and those things, you can always supplement your offensive line in the second half. And this is a lesson to be learned from the Ravens as well. you have to stay true to your identity. I thought the 49ers in the second half, especially late, really got out of their identity, I think, in the right kind of spirit, in the way of saying, we know we're going to have to keep trying to score, and so we're going to be aggressive. But because it was out of character, you could have stayed in quote unquote in character and run more play action, for example, or some different kinds of runs. Now, the running game did not work great against the Chiefs defense that was vulnerable all year against the run, but I felt like they got out of their identity, and the Packers in the second half especially really never did that. That has to continue. Overtime. We have to talk about the overtime. Matt LaFleur has generally been more aggressive than Kyle Shanahan in game management, in trying to double up possessions, end of first half, beginning of second half, or in kick-go situations. Matt LaFleur has always been more aggressive than Shanahan. He's always thrown more on early downs than Kyle Shanahan. Although I think the Packers can do much more there. I think they can be even more aggressive on early downs throwing the ball. We're going to talk about that when we talk about what's next for Matt LaFleur. The overtime thing is a disaster. It is a total disaster. And not because they made the wrong call, taking the ball first. In the moment I went, why did they do that? But the math nerds say because you get a potential third possession and because there's a first mover advantage and all these things, like it's about 50-50 in the NFL's version of it, because it's not like college where you just keep going back and forth. Now, the Chiefs say if we'd have scored, we'd have gone for 2. And if the 49ers would have scored, they almost certainly would not have. That's not the problem. The problem was the Chiefs knew what they were going to do from training camp. They knew in an extended overtime scenario, which we knew was coming, they knew we want the ball second and we're going to go score a touchdown and go for 2. We intend to go and try and win the game. Eric Armstead, Packers defensive lineman, said, I was learning the rules on the screen in real time. Kyle Juszczyk said he didn't know the rules and then had to backtrack. And then Kyle Shanahan after the game has to say, oh, well, actually I knew and I just didn't feel like anyone needed to know and I didn't communicate. No. First of all, I'm not buying it. It's ass covering. It's excuse making. It's stupid. I wanted the third possession. It tells you everything you need to know about the way that these two teams operate. The Chiefs are truly all gas, no break. We're thinking about the Super Bowl rules in the Super Bowl, or the postseason rules, but the Super Bowl rules, and saying, we know what we're going to do. We want the ball second and we want to go for 2. We want to do the harder thing because we have belief that we're going to score. We're going to go to the playoffs. We're going to go to the Super Bowl, and we're going to need to know these things. Whereas Kyle Shanahan is kind of conservative. Well, we'll see. Didn't communicate with his players. Now, is it the reason they lost? No, but it is a mindset. You'd rather have Andy Reid's mindset. You'd rather have Andy Reid's preparation with his team than Kyle Shanahan's with his. Don't do this. You have to have your guys prepared. You have to have them ready. And I made this point on social media. The Patriots built a dynasty out of the other team beating themselves, because there's been a lot of like, oh, the Chiefs got so lucky. And they did. Like by the things that we quantify luck, the luckiest playoff run of the last 10 years or whatever it is. But the way that you get lucky, and the Patriots, if you look at their dynastic run, I mean, all these one-score games, all these close fourth quarters, it is incredibly fluky and lucky that they won as many as they did. Incredibly fluky and lucky that they won 6. The preparedness can be the difference. They were always the more prepared team. And so in those close games, in those small sample sizes, you give yourself an edge. And the Packers, they have to be, now that the expectations are changed and they're not, like running into each other on routes anymore. These are the things that you have to be thinking about. These are the things that you have to be worried about Matt LaFleur and his staff have to be ready with every little detail for this team moving forward. We finish up here on Locked On Packers in just a second. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on free Fire TV channels app. I want to end this here because there's a lot of things, a lot of questions as we head into the offseason. And there are going to be contract mechanisms and things that we don't even know about that are going to happen. The Jordan Love contract, the fact that it cannot be done until May, from a financial standpoint, is a bit of a double-edged sword. But I would say there is the two sides of the blade, if you will, are not the same in terms of their sharpness. I think it is better for the Packers to have to wait because in all likelihood, he's going to make a bunch of money, right? Jordan Love is going to make an absolute boatload of money. On the cap in 2024, he only counts for just under $13 million, $12.75 million as it currently stands. I have to figure out exactly how these escalators and all these things work into all of that, but it's a small number. When he signs that deal, that number is going to go up. Okay? Now remember how post-June 1 contracts work. If you want to post June 1 a contract, you could cut someone, well, not tomorrow, but theoretically tomorrow, but you can post June 1 them, cut them at any time and designate them as a post June 1 cut, but you do not see the savings from that until June 1. So let's say the Packers move on from Devondre Campbell. Well, that makes sense, but it doesn't save them the money until after June 1st. Now, David Bakhtiari is a different story. He is $20 million whenever. So if they're going to make that trade, it is happening whenever. So that means that what the Packers can do is they can, when free agency opens in mid-March, about a month from now, about a month from today, in fact, they are going to have this tiny Jordan Love number and whatever other cap things that they've done. They can move some money around on Jair Alexander, on Kenny Clark, on Preston Smith, on some of these guys. And I expect them to do some of that. But there's also things like Devondre Campbell, that's the big one, and David Bakhtiari, that's the other big one. That gives you that would add to you a lot of flexibility in addition to being able to wait on the Jordan Love contract. The fact that there not only is no urgency, there is no ability to even sign a contract until May. I think it gives the Packers a lot of flexibility here. Now, again, the post-June 1 part of this, if you're going to do the Devondre Campbell piece, that's got to wait. Even if you make the move right away. But that could also provide them a little bit of wiggle room to say, okay, we're budgeting this money for the Jordan Love deal. It's going to come right out of Devondre Campbell's deal. And so we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about it. It's like knowing you're going to get a bonus and being able to pre-allocate money on spending something, in this case, the Jordan Love contract, with money that you don't have yet. Right? So they don't have to worry about, oh, if we sign this guy, what about what happens with Jordan Love? No, you have this carrot down the line that you know you're getting that relief back. So all of that is to say, the not being able to do a deal could raise the price a bit because we could get some of these other contracts, like there could be a top of market contract or two built in here over the next couple of months, couple weeks, whatever it is. That could tick that price up just a touch. I don't think the Packers care that much because if they're going to sign him, they're going to sign him. Right? So the short-term flexibility that it provides is a huge boost in the short term because you can bring in these guys. And then you can also structure the contract understanding you probably have an idea of where you're going to be with Jordan Love. So that allows you to have some flexibility with how you're going to move forward here. And I think frankly, that's a really useful piece for the Packers to have. All right, more tomorrow as we continue on our offseason Locked On Packers. We're going to have a What's Next coming up, I believe, on Monday. We're going to do What's Next for Matt LaFleur. And Matt Ryan is going to join us, someone who has played for Matt LaFleur, who has played for Kyle Shanahan. How can this scheme be advanced? What he saw in Matt LaFleur, all of that coming up on Monday. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Follow us on Instagram, Locked On Packers. On TikTok, Locked On Packers. All of that good stuff. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live or you want to watch our videos, we have more people now watching our videos, some of them anyway, the live ones especially, than listening at times, which is awesome. So what's up to everybody? If you're not doing that, go subscribe. Go subscribe on YouTube so you can stay Locked On Packers.